Today we're going to be making a dragon eye. We need an eraser, a pencil, and a circular form. I'm using the lid of a container. Make sure that whatever object you're using is big enough to fill up most of the page. You're going to trace around that, and you're going to begin going around the eye in an arc. You're going to do the same thing to close the eye in at the top and the same at the bottom. Inside the eye, you're going to draw the pupil. It's going to be kind of like an oval shape with a point at the end. And the light is reflecting inside the eye, so you're going to draw two triangles, one at the top and one near the bottom, and two little circles. That's where the light is reflecting and hitting the eye. Make sure you erase the areas where that reflection is hitting inside the eye. Trace around the outside of the eye. Inside the lid of the eye, you're going to draw kind of like that little arch shape over and over again. That's going to be kind of like some scales that you see right next to the eye. And you're going to make pretty big arches that go all the way around on the top and on the bottom. Towards the bottom of your dragon eye, you're going to do some big U shapes, and these are the big scales that go around your dragon and show his or her dragon scaly skin. Between the eye and the scales, you're going to draw little circles all the way across the bottom, bigger circles, littler circles, all the way around. So we're going to continue making those scales on top of the eye. That's continuing the dragon's form around his or her eye. And they're going to be really big, kind of like these long oval shapes. We're going to repeat the circles from the bottom in between the eye and the scales, all those little circles on the top. Repeat making them all the way around. Your project should look something like this when you're done drawing it in. We're on the second part of our lesson and we are using value. We are going from lightest to darkest. I thought of more fiery colors for the dragon eye, so I went from yellow, light yellow, to like a dark crimson red to think about that fiery eye, placing them in order from lightest to darkest. So if you're using yellow, you're going from a light yellow to a darker yellow to the darkest yellow, and then a light orange to a darker orange, and then a darkest orange. And you can use pink and a light red and a darker red. And you're going to start coloring in around the eye, inside the eye, around the reflection, and around the pupil. So once we have those two colors blended and going from light to medium, we're going to take our next color, which is this light orange, and we're going to go around the edge of that eye and start blending from the outside in to give it some more dimension. You are welcome to choose any colors that you like, but make sure that you are using a value of color. Think of your monochromatic colors going from lightest to darkest. So once I'm done going inside the eye, I'm going to go around the pupil of the eye, around the iris, and color in with a black, and I want it to be kind of light. I don't want it to be too dark around the eye. Once I have both areas around the eye, I'm going to continue outlining all of that inside the eye area. And then I'm going to go in between the scales around the eye and make little dark areas, kind of like a V shape all the way around. For part 3 of our project, we're going to think about the color of the scales that we want our dragon to be. So I'm going to use green, going from light green to dark green. I'm going to start with my light green and make little circles that are colored in that go around the eye where those little scales are, that we kind of made that U or arch shape. And I'm just going to go in and color it in using that lightest color. So I've picked up my next color. It's a little bit darker than my previous green, and I'm going to go around the edge of that circle that I've created to start creating that value, going from that light to that darker value. Okay, now I'm going to pick up my next color, a little bit darker than before, and continue going around, creating that value, going from that lightest to the darkest, starting to fill in that shape more and more so you can really see those bumps and get an idea of that shape and that form. So I'm going to pick up my final color, and it's the darkest one. I'm kind of going in and making kind of like this C shape or a half circle, semicircle, to kind of bring out the light a little bit more on each of those bumps. And now I'm going to go around it with black to show where the shadow is falling on the bumps, where you can't see around each bump, and giving that each bump more definition in its form. So it's going from a 2-dimensional shape to a 3-dimensional form using value. So now that I've done the bottom, I'm going to continue and repeat the same thing that I did on the bottom and do the same on the top, starting from the lightest color, creating these circles, and going gradually darker, kind of like a gradient. Now that I have the top and bottom the same, I'm going to take this black color again, and I'm going to go in between the lines to create a little bit of a darker edge around that's kind of curved on each side. So the bumps kind of look more circular in form. They're kind of creating more of a form as we go from light to dark, and the black is the darkest area. Think about shadows. The shadows are falling in between those little bumps, so we won't be able to see the edges of them, which is why it's so dark in between each bump. What it looks like after I've done that black around those areas, and now we're going to start inside the pupil, going around the reflection on the eye. We want to continue keeping that white, so that's not going to be colored in, but the black is going to be colored in, so using that black material that you're using, and color in the entire pupil. So now that the pupil's colored in, I'm going to go around the edge of the bumpy scales, and I'm just going to outline it a little bit more so you can see a defined shape where the bumps are and where the second little bumps are going to start. So we're going to go all the way around that edge, kind of creating more of a firm line between the big eye bumps and the little skin bumps that we're going to do here in a minute. So here's what it should look like once you've reached this point. Now we're going to start doing those little circles. We're not going to color in these circles. It's just going to be the outer ring around those little circles that we do with a light green or a light color. And we're going to do that all the way around. Once we have all those little circles, we're going to go in with a different color. I'm going to use yellow, and I'm going to fill in those circles with that lighter yellow color. Now that I have all those little yellow circles colored in, I'm going to take a darker color, green for me, but if you're using, say, blue, you're going to use a darker blue, and you're going to go between the circles to color in that area of skin that goes around those little bumpy areas of the skin. Once I finish that, I'm going to use the same dark color pencil or dark material, but press a little bit darker with it to create more of that value, that darker shade with that color to really have those circles stand out and become more of a form. So here's the bottom. We're now going to do the same thing on the top of the eye. So here I've done the top and the bottom. I've gone a little bit towards the center where the nose would be. And now we're going to use that light color again. Color in kind of like this oval shape with our lightest color that we want to use for our skin tone for our dragon, and we're going to color in the big scales. Once I have all the scales colored in with the lightest color, I'm going to use the next color, a little bit darker but not super dark color, depending on what color you want your dragon to be, and I'm going to blend that in to make it create that value. And we're going to go in around each scale and around where the white areas are on both sides, the top and the bottom, around our dragon. Okay, so now I have all the scales colored in around it, and I'm going to go with my next dark color, not the darkest one, but getting darker as I go, and I'm going to outline and just create more of a defining line between the scales where those shadows would lie on in between each scale. I'm going to do that all the way around my paper, all the way around each scale. Lastly, I'm going to take my darkest color that I'm using. So since I'm using green, it's my darkest green, and I'm going to go around each area, kind of give a little semicircle where like the light is hitting it on each scale, going around and creating more of a contrast between where the scale is and where the shadow falls around the scale. So we're going to do that to each big scale that goes around the dragon, blending in with the light, the medium, and the dark. Make sure you have everything nicely colored in, and that is our project.